Good to see you. The economy has been holding steady, and the latest numbers show that jobs have been growing slowly, with hospitality and healthcare seeing increases, but manufacturing seeing fewer jobs. Unemployment has been holding steady at 4.2%. Is a recession still a concern? And will the Fed rate cuts this summer come as expected? Alexander Salter watches these numbers very closely. He's an economic professor at Texas Tech University, and he joins us. Good to see you. First of all, you know, there's been kind of two tracks to what we've seen in 2025. On the one hand, consumers have been, loudly telling us that they're concerned about prices that they have to pay for goods. But on the other hand, big picture economists have told us that things are, on a good path. So which should we believe?
Believe both. Inflation is still a concern. It's good that it's coming back down, but we're not back to the Federal Reserve's 2% target rate of growth yet. We want to get back there as quickly and safely as possible so we can continue to protect the integrity of workers' paychecks. At the same time, it's important to recognize that right now wages are rising faster than inflation. Depending on which measure of inflation you're looking at, prices for consumers are going up between 2.1 and 2.3% per year. Wages are growing at about 4% per year. So this is definitely a better place than we were in summer of 2022, 2023, when workers were really losing a lot of that purchasing power to inflation. At the same time, we want to make sure that the Federal Reserve does not accidentally land this thing too hard, because we want to get down to sustainable price pressures without harming the broader economy.
But, Alexander, one of the big stories, I think, that didn't happen in 2024 was when 2024 started, we had a lot of people saying a recession is on the way, a recession is coming, there's going to be a recession. It didn't happen. We're starting to hear those things now halfway through 2025. So should we be prepared for a recession, or is this more same as the talk that we heard last year?
Never say never, but I don't think a recession is coming. I think that we do have to worry and keep our eye on the downstream effects of whatever tariffs are coming. We should make sure that monetary policy is not overly tight. That said, the jobs data looks pretty good. The most recent GDP report, everyone worried about that because it suggested negative growth over the last quarter, but that was largely an accounting artifact driven by the fact that everybody was loading up on imports in the short run to avoid the tariff. So the very next GDP report that we get, once we've imported things like consumer electronics and consumers buy all those at big box stores or they go into inventories, those will be accounted on the domestic side. And so I think that that's just going to be a blip in the short-term data. Our two biggest concerns right now are continuing frictions in international trade and finance, and that the Federal Reserve does not ease monetary policy in an appropriate way as inflation comes back down. It is possible to navigate those policy challenges successfully, and provided that's done, I'm confident the U.S. economy can avoid a recession.
All right, so let's talk about that last part, the Fed. You said that you wanted to see them land this thing correctly. However, these ongoing concerns about inflation have kind of, cooled the Fed's ability to kind of move forward with some of these rate cuts. So which will win out in this? If the prices and the inflation continue to be a problem, will that push off a rate cut?
I don't think so. I don't think that we're going to get a rate cut in the summer. But most forecasters and the Federal Reserve's own projections do show 2 rate cuts coming in 2025. That'll probably happen sometime starting in the fall. You should look for about 25 basis points, a quarter of a percentage point each. We're very close right now to the Federal Reserve's official target of sustainable inflation of 2%. We're just over that. And right now, if you adjust market interest rates for inflation, monetary policy actually does look quite tight. So there is a balancing act here. You want the Federal Reserve to correct, to make sure that workers are getting relief in terms of inflation not eating up too much of their wages. But you don't want to tighten too much, because that does create costs for the broader economy. The Federal Reserve was late to the game following the pandemic. Since then, they've been doing a reasonably good job, and I expect them to continue to be cautious going forward. But I think that we can ultimately get prices back down to where we want them without harming economic growth and jobs.
All right, Alexander Salter is an economics professor at Texas Tech University. We appreciate you for joining us here on The Hill.